Welcome to Binge Theory, the coolest corner on the internet. I am Julian, and today we have Logan.
Hello.
And Eric.
Hi.
And this is going to be a spoiler-heavy episodic review of The Mandalorian Season 2, Episode 3, titled The Heiress. Now, gentlemen, we've all seen this, and just a very high-level description of the episode, but definitely we can, go out and parse it out and talk about our favorite parts and the parts that we found lacking as we go along. As we last saw The Mandalorian, he had just left the ice planet where he was, limping along with the frog lady and Baby Yoda to this planet where her husband was so they could reconnect. And I say fertilize the eggs. The internet has a whole bunch of different theories that those eggs were sentient. We had a discussion about that before. I've seen on the internet that they were kind of like your, Safeway eggs or Giant, depending on where you live. They were not fertilized. I think Disney kind of pushed back a little heavy on that. So I have a feeling they just didn't think about it until all the outrage of, Baby Yoda eating live eggs. I think Logan was probably right, but they had a answer. If it's genuine, who knows? I'm not saying Disney's a large corporation that will manipulate people to get what they want. I'm not implying that at all. But there you have it. So they head to the planet to reconnect Frog Lady with Frogman. Don't know the real names, but that's what I'm calling them. Actually, they're more like geckos. I think they're more like geckos. But that being said, Frogman is going to show Mando where he can find some other Mandos, and he connects with 3 Mandalorians. Now, this I will turn over to Logan because Logan knows this. I've never seen the Clone Wars or Rebels, so I'm completely out of it, but I knew that something special was happening. I just couldn't appreciate it as much as Logan has. So, Logan, what, good sir, are your thoughts on the Mandalorians that they presented, and can you give us a little backstory on them?
Sure. So, little backstory on the Mandalorians they came across. This was Bo-Katan, who is both voiced by Katie Sackhoff in the animated Clone Wars and Rebels, as well as now played by Katie Sackhoff in real live action. So her exact character, made that jump, voice actress, real actress, and all, to the screen, which it's just a really, really cool thing to see. There's a lot of history that she kind of gave very, very rapid fire in there. That's the thing with Star Wars is that, we've been focused on the one Skywalker family so long that there are hundreds and thousands of families and hundreds of years and wars and civil wars and all sorts of stuff that, they're just now realizing, people might actually be interested in seeing that too. And part of Bo-Katan's history is that between the First Empire, the Republic, the Republic, the First Empire, everything crashing where they are now, there have been multiple changes of hands of Mandalore. So as feared as they are, haven't quite been feared enough to keep their planet the whole time. Bo-Katan does, her family, like she said, has been there for a couple of generations. The back history is long and convoluted, so I won't go into all of it, but some of the highlights, at one point in it, there was a pacifist government led by Duchess Satine, who the Clone Wars actually hinted had somewhat of an unrequited relationship with Obi-Wan Kenobi, which is a whole nother topic for a whole nother time. And then she was more of a... in the comics, she was originally portrayed actually more like the Mandalorian himself, Din Djarin himself. She was more... wanting to go back to kind of their previous more aggressive ways and did not, like that pacifist government. She was part of a group called Death Watch, which is, not the warm and cuddly type, let's stay in peace.
Yeah, that's not like a babysitter branding or anything.
No, not good babysitter branding.
Gotcha.
And through the Clone Wars, they actually teamed up with Darth Maul and his brother and some of the other Sith to try and overthrow Satine in order to kind of restore Mandalore, if you will. But then, of course, that was where Darth Maul then turned on all of them and took over Mandalore as an outsider. They hinted at that history in the first season. If you remember the Armorer, some of the Mandalorians who stayed and supported Darth Maul incorporated Darth Maul's head spikes into their armor, which the Armorer had from season 1. So that was actually one of the first things that I saw that made me, think that they were pulling in a lot more of the history from Clone Wars and some of that other Star Wars canon into this.
Was that the blacksmith?
Yes, the blacksmith, the armorer. Yeah.
All right. Oh, and also Darth Maul's brother's name is Savage. There.
Yes. Yeah. Depending on how you pronounce it, Savage Opress.
Savage Opress. There. I wanted to pull I got that reference.
Yep. Yeah. They. No surprise there.
I get points. I get points for that, for knowing somebody's name.
Yep. So they did that. Maul kind of overturned things there. Then she left. Bo-Katan left because, she wasn't going to accept a non-outsider on the throne. A couple seasons pass. She goes back and teams back up with Satine to now come back and take out Maul. Friend is, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. I think she actually used that when she was trying to convince Satine to come back and work with her, if memory serves. So she came back with Satine and Ahsoka Tano, who she also name dropped.
Yes.
Ahsoka Tano was the Padawan learner under Anakin Skywalker.
Yes.
Though I do not believe she ever finished her training, so she is not technically an actual Jedi. She's received all the Jedi training and a lot of the history and stuff there, but she was not officially a Jedi. So even the fact that Mando's going to her with the child is going to keep things in the gray area, and where that may end up going could be very, very interesting as to whether, he feels that she is Jedi enough, or if, where she's at, because at that point, Ahsoka Tano would have survived Order 66. She would be kind of disillusioned with everything, having all of her clone trooper friends essentially who turned on her. Her, former master is now was Emperor Vader. I mean, that's a little, she needs some therapy, probably.
Yeah.
A lot of that. And she's existing in a very, very gray area.
But to pick on a point from this episode, apparently this Mandalorian does not know anything about the Jedi. He was trying to learn about them. So maybe he won't have.
And he didn't even know enough about his own people. You saw him drop right back into, all right, you took your helmets off. Whose armor did you steal? Let's go. He went straight back there.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
No, that is the scene. And I loved, again, we talked about this last time with the Marshal, where, the Marshal was wearing Boba Fett's armor. And when he took it off, again, that was sacrilege to him. Mm-hmm. And now it makes so much sense, because when he saw the 3 Mandalorians and they took off their helmet, like, hey, this is just an outfit. I'm not going to die with this thing on. And he's like, what? You're not Mandalorian? And they said, oh, he's one of those.
Yeah.
And it turns out that he was the member of a religious sex cult. I just threw in the sex because, I think it adds more to the backstory. But yeah, he basically was in a cult, an extension of Mandalore, where they were just like really, overly committed to that storyline. So now, Logan, going back to the part where, Jango Fett was just wearing. Is it? And again, I don't know
Right.
the canon. Could it be possible that Django was just a normal Mandalorian, not a Uber Mandalorian?
I mean, they've been portrayed, at least as far as I've seen in some of the animated shows and some of the other history, that yeah, they have, you know, various sects and clans that kind of have different ways of doing things. And
Which
the one that Mando is in is a lot more orthodox that way. You know, think of it as you know, I'll do religion here, but think of it, you know, as
yes, say
joining a
something very
nunnery.
offensive to everybody.
The formalization of, you know, wearing a habit and living a different certain kind of a lifestyle and being
Yes.
restricted in things, as compared to perhaps a, you know, holiday church attendee. They're both,
Mhm.
you know, arguably following the same religion, just to different extents and prioritizing different things and different extremes and stuff that way. And I think that also went to show just the difference in character acting between, I'm going to blank on his name now from the first episode, to Timothy Oliphant and Katie Sackhoff. The
Yes.
way they carried themselves, Oliphant didn't even try to pretend that he was anything, and he was just like, "Oh yeah, I'm kind of in this armor, but what of it? I need it." Blah blah blah. And the strength of Katie Sackhoff's performance to literally just act right through it without ever even answering his threat, because it was such not even a thing. Because, you know, her grandfather was Mandalorian, her parents were Mandalorian, she
Yeah.
grew up on Mandalore. Like it's
Yeah.
not even something worth addressing, and just the forcefulness and strength of her performance. I love her so much.
And you know, and I mean, I know her face, and this is the first time I've ever learned her name, because the first time I think I saw her was in Riddick, and you know, she played kind of that sci-fi bounty hunter type. And I know she's been in like episodics. Logan, I'll leave it to you to tell me
She
what.
was she played the female version of Starbuck in the 2004 Battlestar Galactica reboot.
There you go.
And I met her a number of times, you know, through different conventions and other kind of get-togethers and stuff with some of the Battlestar Galactica groups I was a part of. In fact, her portrayal of the character is one of the two reasons why my middle daughter's name is Kara.
Well, look at that.
So
Well,
yeah, I've been watching her for just a very, very long time. She was in Longmire as well towards the end of that run, when it flipped over to Netflix from, was that AMC it was on originally?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that one.
And then a bunch of kind of other smaller films, some Netflix films, some other little shows and appearances. But she's just an absolutely fantastic actor.
I definitely like that she brings on a strong silence, kind of to go to another space franchise, Ridley, from not Ridley, Wrigley from Alien. Where
No,
it's just
Ridley,
about getting
right?
it done. Anyway, I'm bogarting all the time. Logan, awesome story, by the way, about
Sure.
how and I'm expecting you to get her on the show. Eric, what were your thoughts on just that whole aspect of the Mandalorians being essentially, and again, I'm going to use this comparison for lack of a better one, just different denominations of one religion. So you have, different degrees, and like Logan was saying, different things that they embrace as sacrosanct, and other things that are like, yeah, you can wear it, not wear it. It's like Baptist versus Catholic. It's all different approaches to the path, if you will, or the way to hit it right on the nose.
I definitely didn't see that coming. That was definitely a surprise for me. Yeah, totally surprised that they turned that whole thing around. They turned like reality upside down. The other thing that I found really interesting was that they really just opened up the Star Wars like universe. I mean, they just cracked the egg and it's in the pan now. Like, I mean, you can do anything now, So they're breaking that mold, right, from the self-contained capsule episodic type adventures into now they're on this kind of quest. They almost have a quest to go meet these other characters and learn more about the past and the scope of the Mandalorians. So that was really cool. I thought that was really neat.
And you know what? You're right. I think they open up the possibilities. I'm gonna do a comparison to another Disney property with the Avengers, and how if you were just to follow Captain America from beginning to end, that would be an amazing story. But you're locked in on him as a protagonist and kind of like the characters that travel with him. But because you had Galaxies, Guardians of the Galaxy, and you had Thor, and all these different things that are their own, both, high quality stories, and then they intersect, that's fine, or not at all. They can just be in parallel or at different times. I think that lends itself to be more Quentin Tarantino-esque, if I may, which, I'm not saying that there's there's not a lot of violence and horrible slurs, but it's similar to that, where you can have amazing stories for each individual character, and again, I think this, to your point, is it cracked the egg, and now we got yolk all over the place. So
yeah.
And I was looking at IMDb, and the official name of Frogman and Frog Lady is Frogman and Frog Lady. So there you have it. I wasn't being, I wasn't being a speciesist. That is their actual name. So now the one person who didn't have a lot in this, one of the three Mandalorians, was Sasha Banks. And apparently she's a wrestler, from WWE. I was not aware of that, but yeah, I liked her character. I wish they would have done more with her. Logan, what did you think about the actors they had portraying these three, characters? Because I wasn't even familiar with Axe Woves.
No,
Played by Simon Cassandis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wasn't particularly familiar with them. The only thing I can say from the history of the Clone Wars is that when Bo-Katan was in Death Watch, she had an elite group that followed her. I believe they're called the Night Owls. So the way that they kind of so silently and strongly and naturally fell in line behind her, and yes, whatever you say, boss kind of a thing, made me immediately think of that association, so that I wasn't trying to look into them as individual characters as much as those were, parts of her former special forces group that essentially broke off with her when she defied Maul. And the fact that they're all working together now, if you want to talk about plot points and, cracking the egg open and blowing things wide open, there's the whole going back to take back Mandalore. I mean, that could be an entire spin-off, let alone an entire arc. And again, too, that's exactly what has been missing from the Star Wars universe for so long. It's been relegated to novels and comic books and comic shows, TV shows or whatever. And to now bring it into live action on the TV, the more episodic type level, and then to see how they can expand that into, the movies. Look, they've got more content and team ups and just decades of stories, bigger than Marvel, or as big as Marvel in some ways. So they just need to know how to mine the gold properly.
And to that point, I think it's no mistake that Favreau and Disney have decided to, even if they're red herrings and they're just making references that are part fan service and part putting a pin in it for a later date, I just think that's brilliant, because it calls for foreshadowing that we'll set up these other stories that we may do something with or may not, but it still fleshes out, the scenes just a lot more and gives, again, that fan service. One thing I want to go back to is in the very beginning of this episode, with his jalopy, he had no, ability to set in, like, I guess the nav computer for landing, and he did it like, he eyeballed it, and he came in smoking hot. when I saw that, how it started to, right before it started reentry, and it was just kind of dropping towards the planet, and they had one of those just beautiful cinematic shots, and where they do kind of the shaky cam, and you see all the clouds below, and you see just the Seacrest falling. Is it Seacrest? What do they call it? Starcrest, the name of his ship? Because I just want to call it Brian Seacrest. But anyway, so Brian Seacrest is falling towards Earth, and just the way they shot it, it was such a high level. I mean, it's up there with cinema, and that's the first thing that jumped out at me is like, this looks like a bona fide film, not some, not no disrespect intended, but sci-fi presentation.
Yeah.
And I just mentioned that and also, of course, this thing is not science plausible at all.
I mean, I think that's one of the good takeaways, right, that we got from the last trilogy is they really nailed that ship in daylight looking so realistic, and how it moves and through the clouds and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I think if you go back to like Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, they weren't at that level yet, and I think with what is it, The Force Awakens, and then Rogue One, that kind of technology is just, they've really mastered it, and it looked beautiful, in that episode 3, and then also with the freighter ship, right? That was really amazing too, for what's essentially a floating container, no, I really appreciated that too, Julian. I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah, and I also like the thought, like you're talking about the freighter ship, the thought about, well, let's just stow away. Yeah, we thought of that, but they scanned for lives right before. They had this whole protocol. It's not just you take off and fly into space. It's, we need to wait. We need to do it a specific way because, just like if you were to hijack a NASA space shuttle, you don't just walk in and, knock out the pilots and take off. There's, we got to, set up things with ground control and all that stuff. So I appreciated that it was thought out, that people were actually, again, not science plausible, but just, thought out into the overall technical aspect of flying it. I did, and again, it was interesting that he's been doing a few of these kind of pirate heists. I think the last season he did one with Bill Burr. Wasn't that the case? I forget.
Yeah, that was the one on the prison breakout.
Yes, exactly. So
Okay,
that is.
Go ahead. Let's give credit where credit's due, though, because the episode was actually directed by Bryce Dallas Howard.
That is correct. Yes,
Okay.
and she's also the one that did the ATST episode, right?
I believe so.
Yeah. Remember that where she, I wasn't no. Bryce Dallas Howard is killing it. And here's some future information. Carl Weathers is slotted to direct one of the episodes.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah.
And I'm getting the feeling that, if you've been in the business for a while, and again, I've not been in the business, both of you have. So I'm going to tell you what it means to be in the business that I haven't been in, that you two are in, is that if you've been in front of the camera enough times and, have just observed and taken notes, that maybe something like this would be a great launching pad for your directorial debuts, something smaller scale that's a lot faster, that you don't have to work. And I'm sure the production units and all that are not holding his hand, but they kind of have it so formulaic. He just needs to know, like the things that the director, would need, how to delegate to the ADs and all that. It seems like something like this, like you see in soap operas a lot and other episodics, where the actors, want to start doing that just to learn that aspect of it. So I'm interested to see what he brings to the table. And I don't know a lot of the other directors, Logan. Would Carl Weathers be the first African-American to?
No.
Nope. Oh.
No, he would be at least the second. I forget. I'll look it up. I know there was one at least last season.
And to that point, that is a great thing that they're doing with. And again, I don't know if it's PR, I don't know if it's just our better angels, but there is a lot of representation in these episodes, whether it's Polynesian, Asian, African American. It's they're for lack of a better term, checking a lot of boxes, and it's good to see. But that's kind of the culture we're in now, which I think is strong. Speaking of which, I wanted to focus in on the not spaceship, but the fishermen's that originally when Mandalorian comes down and the frogman points him in the direction of the fishermen, and where Mandalorian first meets the other three, and the fishermen try to jack his armor and kick poor little baby Yoda into the Kraken, but it wasn't a Kraken, it was called a monocore, and yeah, you could tell something was being set up, because the fisherman was like, "Hey, you ever seen a monocore eat? Here, get real close, get up right to the edge." I know for it's a half hour. This is like a half hour episode, so it was relatively quick. So they had to kind of just shoehorn that in there. Yeah. Here, come stand real close to this cage that you don't know what's in there. Yeah, just stick your head right in there, and they kicked poor baby Yoda into the Kraken. Eric, that's why I didn't know if your wife wanted to watch, because I didn't know how she reacted when she saw baby Yoda get.
Oh, she was mortified. Oh, she's terrified. That was a tough 5 minutes there.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think about the technology though? Like with the Mandalorian being able to jump in there, and like, so one, I guess he can breathe underwater with that suit, I guess.
It looked like he was struggling. It looked like he was, because if he could breathe underwater, he wouldn't have been like trying to hold himself up in the cage. Yeah, I think it's probably worse. It's almost like waterboarding.
Well, and if you're talking about the other guy who dove in to save Baby Yoda, it didn't seem like those were, they don't have like helmet shields or waterproof bubbles that just pop up. So I would see that as more of a training type thing, where he's able to hold his breath as long as he needs to get the job done and come back. Especially living that close to that much water, they've got to know to deal with that on a regular basis. So their packs have to be modified in a way for the propulsions to work both under and above water.
Right.
And that they would probably, again, practice and train for their surroundings. So it was quick enough that, maybe we couldn't have held our breath and done all the action ourselves, but somebody who was trained surely could have. And
I would have thought that if he could have breathed underwater, that he would have been going after Baby Yoda, but it's almost like he was struggling, being in water. And that's why he's like holding onto the cage, because he didn't even, it was kind of, again, sloppy writing, as he dove in there and came up with nothing. And then he's just hanging onto the cage. It took the other Mandalorians to go in there and save the day, which I thought was cool. And I did notice a couple of echoes kind of back to back, like they flew in to save him, and then he takes off, and then literally immediately he's walking down an alleyway, and then the brother of the sea captain tries to jump in an alley, and they flew in again to save him. It seemed a little like I said, an echo that you see literally the same beats playing out. I just thought that was an interesting choice. It looked odd to me. What do you think?
I mean, it was certainly convenient, but the size of the port coming in was tiny. There was nowhere else to go. And if you're 3 rogue Mandalorians, you're not going to be looking for anybody else to help you. So if there's a Mandalorian there, that, immediately increases your chance of success. So yeah, I would, as I'm sure Bo-Katan did and thought, I would, probably keep an extra close eye on the only other Mandalorian there, because one more Mandalorian with good armor and a blaster is the kind of person that you want if you're going to take out an entire Empire, transport ship.
Right. And again, I get the logic behind, them keeping an eye on him. Obviously, they were shadowing him. it just seemed very odd that the next scene was them literally coming right back to save him. It just seemed odd for, I guess, the balance of it, because it just. But again,
the pacing was very quick in this episode. I mean, it was 36 minutes.
Yes,
it was a hair longer than a sitcom.
Exactly.
So.
Exactly. I mean, imagine if there were commercials. This thing would probably only be like 20 minutes long. But I dug it, and let us talk about. And again, I'll get off this in a little bit, but I just keep cracking up at the science involved. Now, I know you can't hear blasters in space, and you don't bank turn in space. And this is not in the realm of hard science, obviously. But do you really think that, the Ryan Seacrest could take off into space, held together with vines and duct tape? That looked, and jump into light speed, by the way, which,
Right.
I guess there's no stress on the vessel going into light speed, just, put some duct tape on it and you're off to the races. But what are your thoughts on, I mean, again, suspending, disbelief, was that kind of like necessary, that his ship is just in such disrepair that pieces are flying off of it as he's hurling through space? And there's no consequence?
I mean, was it necessary for the story? No. Maybe it plays to a bigger understanding of just the state of the world at that time, and that, this is the best that they can get, because, things have changed hands so much between the Empire and Republic and back and forth, and who knows what. There hasn't been enough stability, so there's no, not much in the way of kind of quality control stuff. But I mean, I've said it before, ultimately, I don't come to Star Wars for science.
You don't?
No, just not at all. So
hey, I'll say this, though, to the point, going back to just an understanding of the universe. One of the things that I liked was that everything was so kind of junky and dilapidated. And I think I might have mentioned this in one of our earliest episodes, not of The Mandalorian, but just in general discussions on Star Wars. Logan, it might have been that marathon one that you and I did on The Rise of Skywalker.
Oh, yes, that one.
Yeah, the review was longer than the movie. But one of the things, at least in my mind, that I came up with regarding the Star Wars universe was that because everything is so expansive, and there's technology that has been developed on one side of the galaxy that you may have never been to. It's not like an iPhone where you can just go to the strip mall and get upgraded to an iPhone 12. You're going to need to hodgepodge stuff that you've gotten from a place you've never been and will never go back to. So I could definitely understand. It's not like there's a universal technology for all places. It's just, hey, this, maybe you'll find some light speeds here. Maybe you'll find some tractor beams here. And everything is just a kind of a thrift store where you get something. And if it breaks, there's no Geek Squad that you can just take it to. You have to make do with what you got. So everything would be kind of welded together and hunks of junk, because that actually made a lot of sense to me in the aspect of it would be like if in Mad Max days. I mean, there is no place to go to get parts. There's not a universal part for everything. Either they have it or they don't, or you hit it with a hammer until it gets resolved. But so I was okay with that. I guess the thing that irritated me was that they had literally strings holding the capsule together, and I'm just like, I would have appreciated, if everything was just welded on, and it was like a car that has primer and missing fenders or different model fenders. That I could dig, but don't, a spaceship,
Vines.
with twine, literally
Being held together with vines.
Vines, yes, yeah. Again, like that's going to hold. So that was a little a stretch for me. I do appreciate the hunk junk mindset that Star Wars is, but don't tie stuff together with vines. That's no. All right. What else did I? Eric. What did you think of the introduction of those Mandalorians? Are you familiar with that lore at all, or is this?
No.
And that's my point, because I had like just a high level understanding from like seeing 1 or 2 episodes of the Rebels and Clone Wars. Somebody who is not familiar with it, do you think they did a good job in articulating their importance and where they were in the universe just by that like 10 minutes that you saw of them? I thought that Favreau did a great job in filling you in without having to do a lot of exposition. You kind of got it. But somebody who hasn't like no exposure to them, what were your thoughts? Were you confused, or did it just click as soon as they started?
No, that's definitely me. I mean, I don't have a lot of experience with the non-Skywalker Star Wars universe, right? And so I felt myself really having to kind of really pay attention to what's going on. They started talking about the black saber, and then who are these Mandalorian people with blue suits? So like I really had to wake up and like, okay, I've got to pay attention here. Did I like it? Yes, because now I'm really interested in more about the galaxy.
You might even go back. You might even go back and try and catch some of those episodes just to familiarize yourself with them. I mean, maybe. Not you particular, but it might inspire other people to.
For sure. No, and this was the first episode where before we came to this podcast, I felt like I needed to do a little like research. I need to find out like, okay, I know there's more going on here. Who are these names that are being thrown out there and stuff like that? So I definitely had to do a little bit of digging just to kind of really understand what's happening now, and what episode 4, what they might be going into. So yeah.
And also I want to give props to Titus Welver, who was the frigate, well, not the frigate, but the ship captain for the Empire. And I'll tell you what, I got a little bit of the member Barry tingles when I saw pristine stormtroopers on a Imperial ship, because they've kind of like the last stormtroopers I really saw was in the first season, and they were kind of like worn down. You could tell it was days past, but this was like an official Empire ship with a captain, and it was interesting to see that. But he played a good character. He's a great character actor. He's been in a few famous, not famous, but some really interesting series. He was in what's the name of that series with the motorcycles? Sons of Anarchy. Yeah.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
I think he was in that. I'm quick looking.
I know him from Bosch.
From what was that?
Bosch.
Yeah, I see that. I see he's in that. He was in. He was also in the Avengers. Not a really prominent role. Man on Ledge, Awakening. So a lot of Law and Order.
So let me ask you a question. With the event that happened on the freighter, I felt like I should have got a little bit of foreshadowing before they just said, "Oh, they're in the control room." Like, I felt like they should have at least shown one shot of like a control board or something, because the layout was a little bit misleading. Like, you had the Empire people who were sort of retreating, and they were in this room that had all these control panels in it, okay, that they showed. And then they, phone up to the captain, and they're like, yeah, they're in the control room. And then the captain's like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
These idiots,
Yeah, he knew exactly what was coming.
But I felt like there should have been some foreshadowing there, because like there were two separate chambers there. I don't know. I felt like that was
it probably was a little clunky. I mean, once you got that audio, I was like, okay, yeah, they're like, in the cargo control unit, which makes sense.
Is that just me, or I don't know?
I did I think the best way to say it is I was a little disoriented by where they were and the relevance of where they were.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think they overplayed the ineptitude of the lower ranks of the Empire soldiers too much. It's
Yeah.
one thing if it's, haha, funny. Everybody always says a stormtrooper can never hit a shot or whatever. But in point of fact, that should be a stereotype, not a reality, because then it's a way to disparage against power and kind of take back against the power. But if it's a reality, then they become too buffoon-like. And I think that was the problem with this, is that, everybody missed and they all just died, and they were, less than red shirts, to use a Star Trek reference. And it made them look too silly and not formidable at all. And then you have this middle manager who's like, haha, we trapped them in the control room, but we, successfully guarded the stuff. And, he couldn't even figure that out. Like there's panicking, and then there's, I was inept before and now I'm ineptly panicking. And it was overdone. It was way too much overdone.
It does seem like a gag they keep going to, because the last episode they referenced they can't hit the broadside of a blah blah blah, insert science fiction name here.
And if that's all they say, that's fine. But then you have to show them not missing and actually being a formidable, force to some extent, or else again they become a buffoon that you can't take seriously. Has
a stormtrooper in these main episodic ones, I'm saying the Lucas storyline and the Mandalorian, have they ever hit anything and killed anything? I'm just curious. I mean, don't get me wrong, they were hitting the Mandalorian, but he had on reflective armor, so that's kind of moot. Has a stormtrooper, okay, no, don't get me wrong, they did execute a whole village full of people in the beginning of what was that, episode 7,
Force Awakens?
Yeah.
Force Awakens,
yeah.
Right? Yeah.
But that's that's hardly in battle. That was,
and they took out the tavern, or Maz's tavern or whatever, in the second one.
Yeah, but these aren't really gunfights. It's more like just, people are sitting still. It's almost literally shooting fish in a barrel. But you know what I'm saying? In the midst of conflict, and I'm just going for lore. Maybe this is why they got such a bad rap, because they've been in all these firefights and they're not really killing anybody. In of course, let's be real. In these episodes, you're focusing mostly on the protagonists, so you can't have them getting killed by stormtroopers. But you're right. The gravity of these stormtroopers is diminished because you don't see them implementing any sort of force or, they're never in command of a situation. They're always cannon fodder. And maybe that's why they need so many of them, because not one of them is any good. It's like, just a whole, maybe they should have gotten some better clones, because it's just, it's, and you're right. It takes down the stakes.
Absolutely.
I think if this is like the last remnants of the Empire or something, right? That these would be like the real badasses or something.
I was going to say, these are the ones that should have been destroyed first. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
I think that's an excellent point, is that making an ongoing joke about these stormtroopers being totally inept, kind of, there's no risk, because you're not going to get shot. You're always going to get away. It's kind of like Dukes of Hazzard or Smokey and the Bandit.
I mean, there's no risks and there's no fear. I mean, Mando literally ran into a hallway with everybody with heavy repeating blasters, and obviously they hit him plenty.
Yeah.
But he still didn't, just went and did it. But to your point too, and I think that's actually a much better critique of the scenario, is that there are no ground level soldiers for any of the characters we're following. There's no cannon fodder for our characters to throw against the stormtroopers. So you've got essentially the stormtroopers always fighting their generals' equivalents.
And completely outnumbering the protagonist and
right.
always failing miserably. It's like, 30 stormtroopers versus, 4 heroes. and the heroes are just dodging lasers, and they're picking them off one by one. Again, it's the illusion of action, and I love how they do it, because look at all the stuff happening. But yeah, is it really? It's like you're essentially in God mode, where you're never going to get hurt, and I don't feel the stakes. So, but that aside, let me see anything else that we wanted. And to your point, Eric, we were talking about the dark saber. Now, I don't know a lot of the obviously Logan knows a lot of the backstory on that. I've heard a few things on the internet, but I love that Moff Gideon is played by Giancarlo Esposito, and anybody who's familiar with Breaking Bad just knows the gravitas he brings to the roles he plays. Little trivia for you, and here's what's hilarious. I did not realize this until like this year. Because I've always seen him. He's always been just this great character actor. The first movie I saw Giancarlo Esposito in, Do the Right Thing.
Really? Huh.
He was literally the guy that was telling Sal to put some brothers up on the wall. That's Giancarlo Esposito.
Wow.
He's also the guy that the guy from Brooklyn scuffed his Air Jordans. That is Giancarlo Esposito. A much younger one, without all the character lines, but and he had like on glasses, and it was just, I was looking, I was like, wait, that's a blah, 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 years younger Giancarlo Esposito. And no, it was just funny that he's been around that long, and obviously a good character actor. But yeah, I think that he's going to be a great heavy in the upcoming episodes. I'm really looking forward to seeing him. And of course, I'm still waiting for Gina Carano. Logan, do you know when she's supposed to show up? Like what episode?
I don't know off the top of my head what episode, but it is supposed to be more towards the middle of the season, I believe. So,
how many episodes are in this season? Do we know?
I think it's only 8 again.
Okay, so we're almost there. Yeah, we
8 or 10. Yeah, it should be coming up soon.
Yeah. And I think this is probably in the point in last season where they also had her appear. So, what's that old saying? History doesn't repeat, but it often rhymes. So, yeah, I think we're in for a Gina and Carl Weathers debut in the next episode, if not the next two. So that should be interesting. Guys, we can go ahead and wrap this up, but wanted last thoughts. Logan, what were your thoughts, expectations? How do you think this is stacking up? Compared to the first season? Did you like this episode? Get your overall thoughts.
Yeah, no, I did like this episode. I thought it could have been longer, but likely with the amount of effects they had to use, that's probably why it was as short as it was. It was probably more of a budget thing than a story thing. The introduction of Bo-Katan and Katie Sackhoff into the live action universe is just still just stunning and incredible, and just to have those characters make so many characters and so many ideas, making the jump from essentially cartoons to live action is just, I don't know, just awesome. Really, really cool to see. And it excites me for so many more things that they can mine in the future, and the stories they can tell and things they can do. And I think that more than anything else is what excites me about everything going forward. I still can't quite get a beat on what the overall serialized story is for the season. So that kind of gives me a little bit of pause. There's just been too many, I think, individual moments and things that it's like, why did I need to watch a 10 minutes on this or a whole episode on this or whatever? But some of the other things they've introduced, with whether it was Boba Fett's armor or now Bo-Katan or the foreshadowing of Ahsoka Tano. It's not like I was going anywhere anyway, but even if I wanted to, I would stick around to see those things moving forward, even without having full confidence or understanding of where the whole story is going.
And if I can just give you a little food for thought. Well, first of all, I can't believe you didn't mention that Rosario Dawson is going to be playing Osaka. We've mentioned that before, but
I'm still mixed on that.
Yeah.
And I say that because I don't get me wrong, I love Rosario Dawson. And she has a history of stepping into existing roles and doing very well with them. when the movie version of the musical Rent came out. She stepped in as I should not be blanking on her name, but she stepped in as a character there that was not one of the original cast, and it worked out very, very well. So she is not the original voice actor for Ahsoka Tano.
I heard about
I'm optimistic, but apprehensive about how much just kind of the voice and mannerisms and everything is actually going to feel like this is Ahsoka or not. So yes, while I'm certainly excited about the concept of the character existing, I am holding judgment until view.
You are a purist, Logan. I will say that. So, and to that one point about some of these episodes not being as maybe informative or are narrative pushing. Somebody mentioned something online that I saw, and it kind of makes sense. We are conditioned to expect there to be some payoff at the end of these seasons, like you're making some sort of progress from point A to point Z, where this, I think, is more, these episodic type of shows are more just like, I don't want to say like Lost, where it seemed like at the end they were kind of just flailing, but it's more like, hey, here's just a day in the life. It doesn't necessarily have to be part of a journey, the hero's journey. It's just, this is a day in the life. And again, I want to get to the dark saber, and I want to get to, Osaka and all, and say her name again.
Ahsoka Tano.
Ahsoka Tano. I want to get to all those moments, but it was just a slow day. I mean, he fell out of the sky, caught on fire, and that it's just it was a Wednesday. Every day can't be weekends, Logan. So
yeah, I mean, I think if it were billed as an episodic show only, like the new Strange New World Star Wars or Star Trek is being billed as, this is an episodic show, a Planet of the Week show. It's not having an overarching storyline.
Great.
Then I would be okay with that a little bit more. And even if they were saying, look, we have a rough plan, but these are mostly, bringing our best ideas to live action, and any one of these episodes could have an aspect of a backdoor pilot. Even that I might be okay with more, because then that would be like, oh yeah, I would totally follow a Bo-Katan storyline of, Mandalore and taking back Mandalore and that kind of a history in a show. And if that's the case and that's what they're doing, was that a backdoor Boba Fett pilot for episode 1? Okay, maybe there wasn't quite enough, but yeah, I might be interested in tuning into that. And I know they're already working on that because just the name recognition of the character. But I feel like we were sold the journey in the beginning, and not having that focus still just gives me pause, because that's what I felt like I was sold to start this.
Disney, you tricked us. You got our money and you didn't give us what we wanted. I mean, this is Disney World all over again. Anyway, yes, excellent point. Look. Eric, your last thoughts on this episode and how the overall series is going so far.
Yeah, no, I still feel like we're on a journey, and that it is not an anthology. I do feel like there is going to be some kind of payoff at the end of these episodes for this season. With probably a cliffhanger for the next season. I mean, how are they not going to do that? So I guess I just have a couple things to mention. I do like learning about the new technologies that they already have that we see on the screen for the first time. You mentioned that in the last of our episodes, Julian, with the heat vision, and I don't know if it's, and then seeing the blaster pack being able to go underwater, and I love learning that kind of stuff. And the other thing I would just say is, like, I appreciate that they're going to all these different planets and showing us all these different landscapes, but I don't need that every single episode. I would be just fine if we were on the same planet for 2 episodes, or let's go back to the ice planet. I think that's okay. I think they're going a little too hard with the different planets in every episode. I don't know how they can keep that up. And that would be my take on the Mandalorian up till now.
I agree with you in that aspect that there's a lot of planet hopping, and I get that in this reality. That's kind of what you do. It's just, but it would be, I guess, the equivalent of us going from New York to Europe and to Brazil to Russia, which is basically the plot of Fast and Furious. So that aside, I would not mind, and to your point, Eric, I would not mind if they stayed on a planet and just different points on the planet. Like, oh yeah, there's a different climate over here. You don't have to go to an ice planet. Why don't you just go to somewhere on the same planet where there's ice? It's a planet. I mean, come on. The whole planet can't just be like Logan's background. Are there other places on, or is every planet just its own biosphere of cold, rainforest, desert? Where are you going? I'm going to the ice planet.
Mono environment planets. Yeah,
exactly. The planets don't have a lot of climate diversity. It's just I'm going to that salt planet. Where'd you been? Oh, I was at the ice planet. Where were you at? I was at that rainforest planet. It is a little it's almost like instead of just having different locations, you just have different planets, because you can go to a planet. And excellent point, Eric, because it seems like just because you can go to other planets doesn't mean you have to go to other planets. And it would be nice if you could stay literally grounded and just have, some journeys from, hey, we were in the rainforest, now we're at the desert, but it's on the same planet, just thoughts. But no, I appreciate that. And I want to go back to what Logan said in regards to the Star Wars episodes. Excellent point. And I think the difference is because there's already such, a story, arc that's already been provided in advance, we're trying to get to that point. Whereas with Star Trek, especially the original series back in the 50s and 60s or 60s. Yeah.
And the Next Generation.
What was going to happen? Every episode was discovery. And this is kind of like, we just want them to get to where we need them to go, as opposed to what's going to happen today. So I do get that. And
I mean, I want to feel like every step along the way has a purpose. I don't see a purpose to the ice planet detour in any way, shape, or form at all. I can see a little bit of purpose to this episode because of who he runs into, Bo-Katan, and some of the kind of the side stuff. And I'll even give them that, yes, I think she did deserve, her own focal point of an episode for an introduction. So that made more sense, but I just don't see anything in the last episode. And, being back on Tatooine again, just a different city on Tatooine, which is still desert though. I don't know. I'm not making the connections yet, and we'll see if it pays off. I have every confidence in Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, but we'll see.
Exactly. Otherwise, you're going to stop watching if they don't come with the goods soon, right? You're just going to, I'm done. Cancel my membership. I don't want to know how the final episode ends. I'm done.
No, if I did that and my daughters couldn't watch Frozen, it'd be more hell to pay. So no, I'll stick around.
Frozen, that took place on Hoth, right?
Yes.
The ice planet.
The Princess of Hoth. Yes, Princess Elsa of Hoth.
Exactly. But and I've kind of given a lot of my thoughts on it. I do think that because of the format and because of the universe and all of the stories we've heard and experienced outside of this, we have expectations. Some of them are being met, some of them are not. Some we find some surprises along the way. Like Eric said, that I want to look into that, or I didn't know that, and I think I mentioned it when we were talking about the Marshal, where that was the first time I got to see a little more of the Sand People. And I could watch literally an entire episode just dedicated to the Sand People. And I'm sorry,
Right.
that's a insulting term. The Tuscan Raiders. Are they tech? What are they called, Logan? Because Sand People sounds a little,
I think they're just Tuscan. I think Raiders are more
Tuscans,
the term associated to the people who
Yes.
that don't understand them.
Exactly. The Raiders is kind of a slur. And they hated those Tuscans. I mean, that was some of the most non-woke writing I've ever seen in my life. But and to that point, I enjoy learning about new characters that are not primary characters. Just fleshing those out and making it an interesting character and groups of people and species and races and it just I find that so refreshing in a now and again Star Trek did it, but it was always, well, at least in the earlier ones, it was always you're going to this new galaxy and you're discovering them and then you move on to the next one. So it was less of a understanding of them, more of just an exposure to them, and then you move along your way to break the prime directive somewhere else. And this one, I appreciate that they're coming back to characters you do know and just filling in some of the blanks. So I'm all for it. I'm looking forward to Rosario Dawson, Gina Carano coming back, Carl Weathers' directorial debut, the Dark Saber with Giancarlo Esposito. All good stuff. I think they got an all-star cast, and they keep adding to their bench. I think it's great stuff. Gentlemen, that being said, as always, I appreciate you, sharing your thoughts and insights on this, and definitely looking forward to episode 4. Do we know what that one's going to be called? Is that been titled yet, or are we just waiting? Are these listed anywhere so we can just see all the spoilers?
No, I haven't seen the title of that one yet, but that is the one that I think is supposed to be directed by Carl Weathers. So,
all right, cool.
There we go.
Cool. All right, so we will see. That is excellent. So, gentlemen, thank you again, and for everybody at home watching this video, we appreciate your supporting us and indulging us as we just go on and on about all these important things. And if you have any recommendations, movies you like, things you'd like us to talk about, episodic reviews, always taking feedback from our audience. We appreciate you watching this. We want you to be safe, be kind to one another, but most of all, remember, if it's worthwhile, it's worth binging.